As a cognitive linguist, I'm always impressed by the power of prototypes, which heavily influence our conceptual categories. My current research intends to identify the prototypes of women in American ads. The study is driven by the following research questions. What are the prototypes of women in American advertisements? What features do they have? How are the prototypes connected? How do they change over time? To be able to answer to these questions, data was collected from the Advertising Archives database, which contains over 100,000 well-captioned and catalogued pictures. Images that are available online stem from American press adverts, American magazine covers, and artwork, including story illustrations, mail order catalogs, vintage magazines, posters, postcards, menus, and theater programs. As the chart shows, the distribution of the images is quite balanced in the 20th century. There are only some outlier categories. The earliest decades, namely the 1890s and the 18,000s, and the latest, namely the 2010s, seem to be underrepresented, while the 1950s is a bit overrepresented. This dataset is still considered suitable for the identification of the prototypes of women in American ads. But how? How can one make this corpus informative? These questions bring us to the issue of methodology. Due to the size of the corpus, data can be processed most effectively with machine learning, deep learning, and AI methods. Each research question was approached with the most fitting machine-aided method. Prototypes were identified with clustering, which I will explain later. The features of each prototype were studied at a deeper level on the basis of similarity metrics. It means that the most similar 5 images were inquired in case of certain selected images. It's hypothesized that the prototypes exist not in isolation in our mind, but they are connected. What we can easily investigate is the relation of the pictures of the corpus based on the graph theory and its computer-based application. Our intuition suggests that the image of the ideal woman changed since the 19th century, which must have affected the prototype of the women as well. This issue was tackled by generating the main image of each decade and then comparing them. Due to the time constraints, I cannot tell more about the technical and theoretical background of the methods, but I will go into further details in my conference talk. Among the 4 research subtopics, namely the identification of prototypes, their features, their relation, and their evolution, I focus on the first and the most basic one from now on. So let's see how women are represented in American ads. Our algorithm suggested that the most ideal case is to divide our corpus into 8 groups. We could have written a model that creates 1, 2, 3, 50, or 1,000 clusters out of the corpus, but it was calculated that the ideal number in this case was 8, so the model was set to form 8 clusters. After getting 8 bunches of pictures, we studied them carefully and tried to identify features that they share or common features that connect them. This way, we came up with the following categories: face, part of the body, naked body, artistic portrait, artistic figure, with other persons and things, clothes, women as illustration. Before we see them one by one, we must note that our method is based on the tense cooperation of human and machine intelligence. In this case, the machine investigated the 2,400 images one by one and sorted them into 8 categories. But it's a human task to provide this categorization with meaning, since only humans bear the sense of meaning making. Now, let's see the result of this joint venture. The first category contains images that solely represent the face of women. This phenomenon can be interpreted as a metonymy, since the face, a salient body part of humans, stands for the whole person. As the images suggest, the face is in the center of the picture and hence get to the center of attention. The plain background of the images makes the face even more emphatic. This cluster is mostly made up of illustrations. The images of the next category let the viewer see more from the woman than her face. Images belonging to this category show mostly the upper part of the body. These women are captured while they are engaged in some kind of activity, like sitting, lying, hugging, kissing, or phoning. The person or persons they are with and the object they manipulate get also to the focus of attention. Mostly illustrations belong to this category. The next prototype is the naked body. Our algorithm found those images similar that depict naked or partly naked women posing for the camera. Drawing one's attention on the woman's naked body highlights such aspects of the body as the skin, the figure. One could easily argue that these illustrations and photos objectify the women and are sexist. The body can be the subject of art. This category contains set photos which were taken in a photo studio. Models are typically staring into the camera in artistic postures in an artistic background. One would consider these women sexy and attractive, but others would regard these photos as sexist. What we can be sure about is that these women advertise products, mostly cosmetics, of certain brands. They are often contracted to be the face of a brand. The prototypical artistic figure of a woman is similar to the previous category, since these photos are also set and artistic. However, in this case, the background and the objects, for example bags, are more emphasized. The viewer has the impression that these women are depicted in a more natural environment, not necessarily in a photo studio. Women are also portrayed in big companies with other persons or things. The images of this category are typically crowded, detailed, and colorful. The figure of the woman tends to be much smaller than in the previous categories. Hence, the woman is not alone in the center of attention. The prototypical woman wears fashionable clothes, according to the next category. Illustrations of this category draw the viewer's attention not on the women's body, but on their clothes. Finally, the drawing of a woman can be a pure illustrational element that goes with the textual element. In this case, the textual element dominates the image. This idea finishes my talk on the prototypes of women. However, as I mentioned before, there are still some research questions left to answer. Just a tiny hint on the results. This timeline shows the prototypical images per decade based on the mean images. It reveals exciting details about the changes of the prototype of women. If you are interested how prototypes are connected and form a similarity graph, it's also worth listening my talk on November the 26th. Let me close this video with special thanks that go to my husband Zoltán Varjú, without whom I couldn't have carried out this research. Good news for geeks that the code is available in our GitHub repository.